This is Get Inspired with Dr. Barb. Hello, everyone. This is Barbara Vocatis, host of Get Inspired with Dr. Barb, podcast on education, innovation in education. Today, I have an absolutely fabulous guest connecting from Hong Kong. So right now on East Coast, it is 11:20 a.m. Eastern Time. Based what I found out from Jonathan, my guest, it's after midnight there. So we are starting the day, so to speak, and over there they are, well, it's night and it's dark. But therefore I'm very thankful to Jonathan that we could connect. And so far connection is perfect. Sometimes I have trouble with people connecting locally. And here today I'm connecting with Hong Kong and it's perfect. You just never know. Jonathan, welcome on my show, Get Inspired with Dr. Barb.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me, Barbara. I'm so glad to be here, having the chat with you about my journey and also neurodiversity work, especially for the work.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. What an incredible person you are. And I have to also welcome our wonderful audience. We might have teachers, parents, or school leaders in our audience, or anybody interested in education. And I would like to tell our wonderful audience a little bit about Jonathan because there's just so much he has achieved in the area of neurodiversity. Jonathan is a presenter, trainer, and I also saw a word, which is an amazing word, connected to Jonathan, strategist, right? Neurodiversity strategist. Just in fact, Jonathan was diagnosed with both autism and attention deficit in 2019 at the age of 37. So you were diagnosed quite late. Jonathan is neurodiversity advocate, TEDx speaker who delivers transformative talks and workshops for Fortune 500 companies and multinational organizations globally. And these organizations include such organizations as BNP Paribas, I don't know if I pronounced it correctly, L'Oreal, we all know, Generali, Logitech, and Warner Bros. Discovery. What it does essentially helps this organization create inclusive workplaces for neurodivergent employees and also to support caregivers of neurodivergent family members. I am myself a caregiver for a neurodivergent person, a teen. So this is a beautiful journey, but it's really very easy. But also, Jonathan's advocacy has earned him recognition from Hong Kong Sensational Foundation and the UK-based International Forums of Inclusion Practitioners. And his story has been featured on TVB, Pearl, and Yahoo Hong Kong. I also wanted to mention that Jonathan is a part of organizing committee and panel host for 2026 Davos Neurodiversity Summit. And that summit is picking up some attention, I know, on social media and especially on LinkedIn. And Jonathan facilitates these conversations. And really the aim is to bring together researchers, advocates, also just people who have these lived experiences to just continue making the world a better place for neurodivergent people, but not only, because if we make a world a better place for these individuals, we also make the world better, really, because we are all in this together. These are not separate populations. We all live together. So that is why this work is so incredible. And again, welcome on my show. I mean, this is an incredible list of achievements. And I need to ask Jonathan, number one question. I mean, it would be obvious why you are such an incredible advocate, but if you could if you could take us to the beginnings when you were not diagnosed, you had no clue that you had autism, and you were a boy in school, in educational system. And how was it like for you? Let's just take us to the beginnings.
Yes, I mean, I got to say that when I was a primary school student, there was a teacher, and she had a meeting with my mother, and then she commented that she said this to my mom, saying that your child is not lazy. It's just that his mind wanders here and here. And then when I look at my report card, I did rather well in social studies, um, and English, but not in other subjects. I was often reminded to study hard when you come to mathematics. I I could also remember that when I was a grade three student, I was a member of Boy Scouts, and simply say I learned about Boy Scout in grade eight, and then I became a more committed member of the Boy Scout in grade nine. And then there was the rule that if you miss the weekly Boy Scouts meeting three times, you will be asked to go. And I remember that it was Wednesday afternoons. When I was a primary school kid, all Wednesdays only had half day classes. And before everyone was dismissed, I asked the teacher to give me 5 minutes. And then I came to the front of the classroom and announcing the names of the classmates, the classmate that skipped the Boy Scout meeting three times. And they simply say announced that you were asked to go because you missed the Boy Scout meeting three times. And so it means that I really abide by the rules. But then when academically, when it came to the subjects that I did not really understand why I need to study, I just wasn't interested in all. For example, mathematics. I did not understand why I had to study maths so hard. And then when people said it to me, this is what it is. This is curriculum. You need to do what the curriculum, what the curriculum requires to do. I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Don't understand. And then I yeah, and then I believe that I mean when you take classes of social studies, at least you can understand how the world works.
So, Jonathan, I mean, but you said something interesting that the teacher told your mom, uh, listen, it's not that Jonathan is lazy. That's what she said, right?
Yes.
This teacher had some at least basic understanding, and that this is not this child being lazy. There's just something else going on. This child thinks differently or has some difficulties, something that prevents him from just, I don't know, being a good student, right? That's how the marker of doing good in school is getting good grades, right? And it has not changed for decades. But I need to ask a follow-up question for that, because was this an educational system in Hong Kong at that time? That's where you were as a young student stationed,
I
or?
I mean I believe that I mean I would say that all the classes when I was a primary school kid, my class had 40 each students. So it was
Wow.
one teacher versus 40, even 44 students.
Wow.
And then, uh, and then by the end of grade six, um, you had the Hong Kong wide assessment test, and the
Mm-hmm.
results of the test could determine uh, the quality of the high school to which you were allocated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is the assumption that if you end up going to what we call as the in Hong Kong we call it the Band One schools. In other places you can call them as the highly selected schools. And then if you get into a highly selected school, the chance that you can become a professional, say being a banker, being a doctor, being an engineer, is much higher than
Yeah.
someone allocated to um, schools of other bandings.
Well, I mean, we've this system exists in some European countries too, still. One test determining the future, really, it determines the trajectory of your life. One quick question. At that time, when you were this little boy in the school and you didn't understand much what was happening to you, right? Like why you have these difficulties. My understanding is that at that time, was there any knowledge about autism, things like that, or not at that
I
time?
I don't really think so.
Right.
Yeah, I this is my assumption. My assumption is autism was often associated with intellectual disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I said this is because my brother was diagnosed with autism and severe intellectual disabilities when he was 3 years old. So this is and then this is how my family first learned about autism. And
Right.
then in the old days, if you were if you were classified with autism and intellectual disabilities, you will be placed in a special school. Whereas when I was a kid, if you were considered as Aspie, then people would rather find you a nerdy person or someone who happen to have special or facilitated interest over something. You just act differently from others, but your IQ is above average. You should be able to learn how to fit in yourself with the environment.
Yeah. I agree with that. The same here in the United States years ago. Uh, without knowing about these conditions, these children, well, of course, they were just considered, well, you're lazy, right? You're not learning what we're teaching. You're basically lazy. That's how it went. But then fast forward, at the age of 37, you learn that, well, oh, wow, I have autism. So how did this happen, and how did this change your life? Learning about the diagnosis when you were just a mature adult.
Okay, I can give you a bit of context first. So I first learned about myself with ADHD. The long story is, in 2018, I got a new job. I worked for the public body, but then as soon as I entered I entered my office, I felt that I was already in the black hole. So simply say I returned to my desk at 9 a.m. and then I left my desk at 1 p.m. for lunch and then returned to my desk at 2 p.m. and I continued working until 6 p.m. and then just kept my bag and ran. I did the I mean I did the same for 2 months, and one day I realized that it wasn't right. I was depressed, and then I realized it wasn't right. I decided to get the support from the general practitioner, and he diagnosed me with adjustment disorder because moving from one job to another job could be very stressful.
Yeah.
And then I asked myself, hey, why my mind always went blank when I needed to read documents, and why my mind wander when I find things boring. And then I further asked myself, I was studying at a community college. I was doing humanities. And by the time that I graduate, I was required to choose the major. I was choosing between English and history. And I decided not to major in English because I had to study linguistics. And I simply say I just did, I did not really understand why linguistics was so important. I decided to major in history, and there was a class focusing on historiography, meaning that you needed to apply theories to study events in the past. And what I was told was, say there was a class of 30, only three got A, I was one of them. I explained all of the key takeaways from my reflection to my first psychiatrist, and he diagnosed me with ADHD. I did not tell anyone at first, And then when you try to speak to the people at work, they would think that, well, if you were an AD, if you're an ADHD, then how come you end up being a professional officer? Or people would tell you not to bring any work related methods to. People would tell you not to bring any family or personal methods to work. And then after a year, my performance was just so poor. My employer would like to terminate my probation, and at that point, I decided to disclose my ADHD. And since I was working for the government body, I was required to be diagnosed by a government psychiatrist. And
Hmm.
this psychiatrist interviewed me and my mom for 3 hours. So simply say, my mom and I were asked literally and more than 100 questions. I got to say,
Mm.
from my grandparents to my parents to my life, my behavior as a kid um, to recent habits and hobbies. And then after 3 hours, she believed that I would be having ADHD and autism. And I was surprised at first by autism. And then the more I dive into this, the more I realized that the diagnostic criteria were changed in 2013. Technically speaking, we don't have Asperger's symptoms anymore. Already, it's a part of autism spectrum disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then what I find it's not less. It's not difficult, but what I find is at the end of first of all, most people know Asperger's syndromes, but they do not know this does not exist medically. And second of all, people often wonder whether you can fake or mask yourself with autism with autistic and ADHD tricks in front of psychiatrists. I got to admit that uh, because when it comes to mental health diagnosis, they are not like diagnosing if someone has diabetes or heart disease.
Yeah, right. It's different.
In some ways, it has the subjective elements. In some ways, even it was 7 years ago, although there are some discussions surrounding autism and ADHD in adults, most of doctors were new to to were new to assess if someone could be autistic and or an ADHD.
Yeah. Uh, so you were entering the world of employment and having all interesting experiences, collaborating and working with other people, not necessarily knowing you didn't know your autism diagnosis at that time. What was the hardest part of being a part of workforce, working with others, knowing that not necessarily that, you had autism, but that you were different, right? That you think differently than others. And what was the hardest part in interactions with people who supposedly were mainstream? They didn't have autism. They were not different, although everybody is different. But obviously, you knew that you were a little bit different, right? And what was the hardest part in these interactions for someone who, even at the time, did not know had autism, but you did?
Yeah, I think there could be several. I may say one of the challenges. Let's say my department. Let's say when I was working as a teacher, my team had the dinner, and everyone enjoyed the dinner. But I looked so stressed and serious,
Mm.
and then my colleagues asked whether I was not happy with the dinner. No, I was very very happy with the dinner. I even enjoyed the wine. I was just paying attention to what others were saying. I mean, so first of all, it's really about the facial expressions and understanding
Yeah.
the social cultural cues.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing was, I would rather say that I did, it's really about paying attention to details. It was before the era of generative AI. That's why you need to pay attention to every detail. And quite often I could spell words incorrectly and then just submit the word anyway.
But when I hear you, yeah, attention to detail, that sounds familiar. My child is extremely attentive to certain details, but there is amazing benefits of that. Not all of us have this kind of attention, so it's a treasure. It really is. We just have to know how to use it, and we have to know how to appreciate it. But you said something interesting: the fact that, I mean, in interactions with so-called regular people, let's call them that way, you kind of were right away, you were entering those interactions thinking, how they going to look at me? How they going to judge me? Are they going to accept me? What they going to think about me? Am I right thinking that way? That's what you're saying? I just want to get this right. You had some preconceived thinking and worries and sensitivity. Is that right?
Yes, I think a part of me is to have the sensitivity. It's really about the fear of how others will judge me.
Mhm.
I think there were two areas that I struggle with. The first one was to understand the social cues. The second was to understand what it means to be an acceptable standard of work to be submitted. For example, let's say, for example, let's say you ask me to submit the proposal, and then you ask me to submit a proposal with, let's say, with the following details: budget estimations, criteria selecting the service provider, and the criteria selecting speakers for the event. And then I complete the proposal, and then let's say I nominate the three, let's say I pick speaker one, and then my boss will ask me, why don't you pick speaker two? And then there could be the reason that the speaker two was a parliament member of the government, or speaker two was a parliament is a permanent social member. And then my boss would comment that, Jonathan, you waste my time because you didn't pay enough attention to the details. And okay, and then eventually, what I what I come across is, some people would consider me as employee without the spirit of collaboration. And I was
Mhm.
self-centered. I didn't have, in the medical term, I my capability to take others' perspective was not high. And then the other point that I realized that, let's say you give me the proposal, you give me 10 days to complete. If it was a boring task, I'll only start the work 2 days before the deadline. So I was literally working till the last minute. Or in some cases, I could forget the task, and then I was late to submit to you. And then what I could find out is, because when I had a conversation with my team, especially because for some of the bosses, at first they were, I mean, they try to stay calm, and then they also mentioned this to me, saying that, Jonathan, hey, you understand that we also have boss, we also we also have a supervisor about us, and we also have family. I know that it is not, we every day we come here in order to survive. So please be the best that you can so that all of us can survive. And then my first reaction was, first of all, I don't owe you the duty for you to survive. Your survival is your survival. It's not my business. So, and then this relationship could be very, very, and I believe that the tension of the relationship was further compounded by the suspect by the by the by the okay by the suspect that, how come Jonathan could be an ADHD and could be autistic? He doesn't look like autistic.
You know, you just said so many things, and I totally understand it when you're saying that. Well, this kind of idea that self-centered, right? Not really working with us as a team. But then they coming back to you and accusing you of things you are not responsible for. So it's not trying to understand the way you work, the way your mind works to work together, but coming back to you and accusing you of things again, like I'm going to repeat it again, you're not responsible for. I find it that that's often the case that happens with neurodivergent children and then later teens in educational system. And I mean, and now with having these experiences that we just heard you share, and I just totally, I think I understand them. How does this then translate in the way you teach, provide some professional development in those companies who say, well, hey, Jonathan, we would like to be really inclusive, not surface based inclusive, but like really inclusive. We want to help neurodivergent people who work for us. And we know that they are amazing individuals, but somehow we have to make it all together. We want regular folks, understand them. We want us all work together. So you come to this equation with all these experiences that you have, you experience them, so you feel them, and we just heard it. How do you approach then providing this professional development, whatever you call it? I call it that way because my area of expertise is education. What is then your approach? What is the number one thing that you try to make these people understand as far as what it is important to do in order to truly have this inclusive environment? And I don't know, it's kind of a complicated question, but I'm sure you understand what can you?
Yes, I mean, usually this is the first, I mean, usually this is what I find. Usually for the company themselves, when usually when I work with them, I also talk about the important understanding the mindset of your team members. So, for example, I mean, one of the questions that I'm often asked by my clients, uh, or for the people that from the business sector is, hey, Jonathan, what do you think about the professionals in our city? I mean, I mean, because one thing that people observe is, let's say, for organizations in Hong Kong or for employees that are committed to neurodiversity, they have something in common. They have kids who are neurodivergent, they have siblings who are neurodivergent, or they were educated abroad, or even if they stay in Hong Kong, they went to international schools. And then for most of the local professionals, they underwent the regular, highly competitive education systems. They believe in meritocracy, they believe in hard work. This is why when you and then this schooling journey shape their value. And this is why I believe that it is important to understand how most of your employees were brought up, and then and and I mean and then this is usually what I say to my friends and even to the clients, saying that the people that you work with are professionals. If you give them a task, they can do it well. But when it's come to the source side of being a great professional, say embracing the chance to work with people from different walks of life, take some time and challenge. Why? Because when they think about diversity, equity, inclusion, they do not necessarily think about widening the talent pool. The first question they ask is whether the company will lower the standard of recruitment in order to hire certain groups of people.
Yeah.
And my point is, yes, you need to accept the fear of some of the employees, and then you just try to work with them, because for some of the team members, especially those who live with the neurodivergent family members, or who rigorously uh, volunteer themselves for the neurodivergent community, they are more likely to incline, more likely to support neo-inclusive measures in the company. Whereas for others, you need to present the business case. And for example, you need to really, you need to show them the demographic changes of the neurodivergent community in Hong Kong and in the region. And then the other point is, it's also important to bring in caregiving into the conversations. For most of the companies, they find it challenging to organize a talk and workshop for the neurodivergent employees because employees are worried that if they join these workshops, they will be labeled with neurodivergent conditions.
Hmm.
But if you talk about caregiving, and then you're gonna find more people joining the talk because they want the kids for their children. They want the best for their children. They want the best for their children in terms of education and career and life planning opportunities. And then for lots of the caregivers, let's say between 3 and 4 p.m. every day, for some of the employees, they are not in the mood of doing the job. They're in the fighting mood because their child's teacher may phone them talking about the behavior of Johnny, the behavior of Maggie at school. So the phone can ring at any time. And then that means that for some of the companies, they want to embrace their role as a good employer. They also want to create a more supportive environment for the employees. This is why caregiving matters when it comes to engaging companies for Leo inclusion initiatives.
It's quite complex, and um, I hope I heard it correctly what you said, and I totally agree with this question of, well, who do you have here? Who works here? Like, look around. Okay, there are people who already have neurodivergent family members in their circles. Therefore, it is pretty much obvious that their attitude to this population will be a little bit different. They already have some knowledge and interaction that will be automatically supportive. But then the rest of the employees, where do they come from? What are their ideas about neurodivergent people? I think this is very crucial because when you look at the children's population school, my child is in a school district with a population of children who, well, it's not a secret that often children's opinions come from their parents, and what their opinions are about neurodivergent children carry to school, and that it shows up, their attitude shows up in the school, how they treat those other classrooms. These kids are in the same classrooms, but they are not treated in the same way. And they are not bullied, okay? Because bullied, of course, we know, right? There is laws against bullies and all that. And they know that, these kids. So they come up with other ways of singling out children who are different, right? And you know that very well. That's pretty much what you're saying. So these attitudes don't come from the air. They are rooted in the society, in certain society levels, pockets, populations. And that's what you have to look at. And I think this is brilliant. I mean, it should be so obvious, right? But this is very necessary to think about it that way, because that's how you then should think of the intervention. I mean, it's probably not the best word here, and I don't like the word intervention to begin with, but how you approach, how you help everybody to actually be inclusive really needs to start from here. And that would also help so much, schools who have to handle these issues, but they often don't know what to do. They often don't look at the roots of certain opinions and behaviors that children display, and they are so pervasive. It's unbelievable. But this is also something that's very hard to change, right? That's very hard to change. Is there any strategy or exercise activity that can be done? And I know I'm asking you about something generic right now that can help people think a little bit differently. Because really, what happens here is this: we have certain opinions about certain people, including neurodivergent people, only because we live with people who have these opinions. So we are influenced by opinions of others, right? Our family, our friends, our parents. So it has to be something that you can do to start peeling these layers of others thinking that impose on us and thinking, hey, there is other ways of thinking about neurodivergent Johnny or Annie. They can actually be cool. And maybe if you open yourself to thinking differently, you can even benefit from interacting with them. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm thinking, like how we can start changing these attitudes and really help. What we need to do, I think, how do we help create genuinely inclusive climate in schools? Because inclusion is only surface level. Like on the surface, we doing inclusion, all right, everybody's happy. If you look deeper, there is no inclusion, and there are not too many kids who are happy because everything is only surface level. That's what I see. And hey, if I see it in the United States, it's like that probably everywhere. How, according to you, and I know I'm asking you a very tough question, how do we, and that's for schools, that's for employers, how do you start helping people question their own beliefs about other people?
Yeah, I believe that there are not any simple and easy solutions, but
Yeah.
let me just break it down into different segments. The first one is, let's start with the family first. And then what I see is, for any neurodivergent families, I mean, for the families that create that create a supportive environment for the neurodivergent family members, they tend to have a high level of involvement, family involvement from the father. The fathers go to their kids' events. The father is proud of their kids. The fathers are active in are active in facilitating learning opportunities for the kids. What I found out is okay. It started rather from the observation of from the observation of my brother hostels. Okay, I got to say that mm, okay. I mean, my brother's neurodiversity has the intellectual disability side.
Hmm.
He now lives in the hostel, and the hostel has the quarterly meeting for the family members of the residents. When I joined the meeting for the first time, let's say there were 15 members, and two of them being men. The chair the chairperson of the meeting was the man, and I was the other man. And then at the end of the meeting, it lasts 3 hours, and then I got all the praise, saying that how good, how good you are, Jonathan, how great that you come to the meeting. And then I realized that if you are a woman, then your attendance is taken for granted. So and then and then what I observe is, for some of the parents, they want to fix the kids to belong more like everyone else. And then for other parents, they just do everything for the kids. For example, the kids are given the debit card to order lunch and dinner from the restaurants they like, because some of the families don't want to, they want to avoid conflict because of sensory sensitivity
Mm-hmm.
from the food. In my opinion, all the kids, either neurotypical or neurodivergent, have different abilities.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they need to learn life skills: financial management, ironing your clothes, cooking your dishes, and protecting your body. It started within the family, and then for the school itself, this is my observation. My observation is, say, I would say, I work as I was trained to be a teacher, um, 10 years ago. I wasn't required to learn how to teach students of different abilities. It was just an elective.
Yeah.
I would say it depends on the education system of a country. I believe that when it comes to teaching kids of different abilities, some of the teachers are more ready than others. Whereas for some of the teachers, or perhaps in the other way, you can say that when when you come to inclusive education, some of the teachers already had observation over this idea, and then for some of the schools, they decided to become inclusive because of the crisis of enrollment. So
Mm-hmm.
you're rather a passive mindset, and the mindset needs to change. Yeah, and then the other thing that I observe is, for some of the education bodies, let's say the International Baccalaureate authorized the first special needs schools for autistic learners in 2024, and the school is in the UK. And the reason why I bring this up is because the more the more I mean when I look back my time as a teacher, when I speak to educators, when I look at education reform in different parts of the world, people somehow know that when it comes to engaging with neurodivergent learners, you don't really track the grades. You need to really think about how to make skills transferable, how to make learning encourage based, and how to cultivate opportunities for social, social and emotional development. And this mindset shift is important, but it's going to take some time. The paradox of placing emphasis on academic achievement is, when you look at someone's report card, if that person gets, let's say, gets GPA like 3.9, you think that the person is fine, but that person may be autistic. And the reason why this person manages to do well at school is because school has a structure, curriculum has the structure. And what it means to be doing well in the exam is, under the given conditions, under the given curriculum, you manage to provide the responses, managing to hit or meet the requirements of the examiners. That's why you get good grades. But the reality is, the real world is not going to be like school.
No.
That's why you can. I mean, that's why you can get 3.9 GPA. You can get a degree. You can get degrees and PhDs from some of the best university in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You will still have issues in getting a job. You still have issues in daily living.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and lately I have a chat with an inclusive education academic, and then what I share was, schools do not like to invite graduates graduates who did not do well academically but managed to thrive professionally, to come back to school to share their journey. Some of the schools are, I mean, for some of the schools, or for some of the educators, they are very about sending a warm signal to the students, saying that if you don't perform well at school, then that's fine. You can still earn a handsome amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we need to have a we need diversity, we need diverse representation of the neurodivergent community for the world to know. While people think that, well, if you're neurodivergent, then the chance that you end up being a cleaner, being a stock taker is high. The reality is you also have people that are lawyers, that are doctors, that are professors, that are bus drivers, that are entrepreneurs. You need to have a diverse representation in school, in workplace, and in the media. What I found out is for neurodivergent professionals, they only feel safe disclosing their neurodiversity after they become the CIO, Chief Information Officer, the CFO, the Chief Finance Officer, and CEO. Either you become the top of the top or the bottom of the bottom in order to feel safe to disclose it. And then the other point is also really about understanding culture.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned this because last year I had the pleasure of delivering a talk on neurodiversity for ethnically diverse population. And what came to my mind was, let's say if you have a Muslim community and then if you have the Imam champion neurodiversity, and the Imam, if there's an Imam talking about why neurodiversity matters, if there is a rabbi talking about why neurodiversity matters, they can create a change in the community. Because if we embrace neurodiversity, if we believe that neurodiversity is an example of God's divine creations, if you believe in God,
Mm-hmm.
then why not why not being curious to learn more about the neurodivergent community? And then the last point is allyships, and allyship starts from high schools. What I have come to observe is, let's say, let's say in Hong Kong, you have a neurodiversity HK. It started from Ava Chan. It started from her school project, and her school project became one of her key callings, especially because of her brother. And now this, and then now neurodiversity HK has attracted in different parts of Hong Kong, even in other parts of the um, and even other parts of the world. And then you also have neurotypical members. They organize events for the neurodivergent community. But
Mm-hmm.
what it means to be organizing events for the neurodivergent community means that you need to have allies, and these allies are happy to work with stakeholders of the neurodivergent community to create programs and activities that are impactful for both communities. Yeah, I mean, at the end, this is what I tell people. This is what I tell corporates. This is what I tell schools. Yes, you have rules and regulations and even employment quotas, but they only govern the lowest acceptable level behavior of a community. But we all can do better than what the law requires.
Well, Jonathan, you just mentioned so many layers, but these layers, and they all have their problems, but you also outline solutions to these problems. If we could make it all work together, boy, we can really make some progress. I love some ideas that you mentioned, and I totally agree with this. Thinking even in terms of, I mean, that's how we were all somehow created. And you don't have to speak about any particular religions, but that's how we are here created on this earth. We are meant to work with all kinds of people, diverse people. And by the way, neurodiversity is just one of the diversities. We are diverse in different ways, right? I mean, races, colors of the skin. And with little children, you can talk about, I mean, everybody in this classroom has diverse hobbies, right? Nobody has the same hobbies here, even though you grew up in the same village. So there's all different ways of explaining to smallest children how we are meant to be diverse. But you also mentioned that, yes, and some teachers are better with this and have better understanding. But even in the United States, teachers who learn about specifically helping neurodivergent population, such as autistic children not only, that's a certain expertise. It's called special education. But when you go into other teaching degrees, you don't learn that. You don't learn. So that's why then you have situations like in high school where teachers teach and they like this. It's not my job to help this neurodivergent kid. If this kid needs help, let them work with someone else. This is not my education. This is not my degree to help this neurodivergent kid. I'm just here lecturing the whole class of high school, students. So I see we have to somehow kind of do something about this. I mean, the teacher teaches everyone. You don't just teach only those who are not neurodivergent. So unfortunately, these are not very good outlooks that we see with teachers. But you just mentioned so many things. I can't possibly summarize, but you certainly have you have a clear set of ideas what can make a difference and change. And like you said yourself too, this is not easy fix. This is not one solution. There's multiple layers. They also have to work together. But there is hope, right? There are ways of thinking about it, how to make this world a better place and how to also help in educational institutions. And two last questions for you that I have. One of them is if you could share what are some future initiatives or workshop that you're doing and you have really high hope for this initiative or workshop or presentation to make a change, right? It would be awesome if you could share.
Yes, I think there are two areas that I would like to highlight. The first one is I set up my company, and I'm also working on creating different workshop consultancy packages, and I'm still working on to get the clients. But what I am working on is to really try to think about Leo inclusion activities from the on timeline basis. So instead of one-off activities, I believe that instead of just really holding the workshop and then just hoping another will be coming up, I believe that it's one to set the timeline for for the organization to think about how to make the organization achieve a high level of Leo inclusion. Different organizations have different needs. They also have different levels of funding, but there is always something that could be done. The second thing is I'm also working on ADHD coaching, and and then it means that I also need, I mean I have chances of working with different clients. And what I find interesting working with different clients is some of them they some of them and you talk about life issues,
Hmm.
whereas for others, they want to talk about their daily issue. And what and it's important to, and I believe that being the coach means um, patience. And for someone who could be impulsive, cultivating patience is equally important. So this is, I mean, so that's why for this year, I still wish to continue local and international initiatives on neurodiversity. But I also believe that instead of thinking about all the workshops on one-off basis, I believe that I can just be boom, be boom that to be as boom as that I can. Um, as you and I share before the interview,
Hmm.
the reason why I okay the reason why I being a panelist of international events is because of a series of coincidences. Let's say for neurodiversity celebration week, the reason why I end up being the panelist for the first time was because I dropped an email to the organizer. I asked for the opportunity. And then for the second, and then for my involvement with neurodiversity for Davos Neurodiversity Summit, it was because I managed to find Marine's book in the public libraries, and then I work at, and then I just talk about the book, and then that's how I got connected with Marine, and then she and I had a chat.
No, that's awesome because it's your curiosity, right? And then when you're curious and you read and then you reach out and, it's like, hey, I read your book. I loved it, right? It's just, that's what we do. Uh, I really wish you that a lot of good comes out of your initiatives, and I know it will. And if there was one thing you would like, let's say someone neurodivergent is listening to us, and they've been through all kinds of experiences, not always pleasant, right? With school, with the society. What would be your advice to someone who is like, let's say 19, 20 years old, right? And they are hard on themselves. If there is one word of advice or tip you would give to a neurodivergent person like that, what would that be?
It's really about loving yourself. The reason why I mentioned this is because for the challenges that you face at the moment, they will go, they will
Mm-hmm.
go. But the most important thing is to really uphold your character, hold yourself accountable for your personal growth. And usually, and this is what I tell people. What I tell people is, if you don't have the skills, you can learn the skills. But if
Yeah,
you don't have the character, if your character is questioned by people, then it can be a challenge for you.
this is beautiful, Jonathan. And I have to say, so many neurodivergent people, they're just incredible individuals. I've met many who are just trustworthy, honest. And we want to work with people like that, people who are transparent, open. You know what you get when you interact with them, right? They're not double faced and all that. I mean, there's a lot of them just like that. So they've got the character, but often they don't see the value if they're in their character. And you just mentioned, see the value in what you bring. You can learn the skills, but you have already something that you should cherish because you already have it, and it's very valuable and very important. I just love this. It was just an amazing tip and actually great end of our show. And now at the end, if you could share where the audience could follow you to follow your activity, what you're doing, where on social media are you present and active?
You can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on YouTube. You can also find me by visiting my website, and this is jonathanmok.com.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for this incredible conversation. And thank you, wonderful audience. Please make sure to follow the show, Get Inspired with Dr. Barb, and let us know also once this episode airs, what you think about this, what you think about these ideas, the topic, and let us know and connect with Jonathan and follow his activity. Thank you so much, everybody, and see you on social media. Bye-bye. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This is Get Inspired with Dr. Barb.